What character did you view totally different as a child versus as an adult? Not sure if this has already been mentioned, but Helga Pataki from Hey Arnold. As a kid, I thought she was an ugly weird girl. As an adult, my mind was blown when I realized how neglected she was. Her mom was an alcoholic and her dad was a narcissist who favored Olga and made her the golden child. Most of the characters have pretty sad stories, honestly. That show was deep and I never realized it as a child. I think one of the saddest parts is she seems afraid to love anyone. It took me a long time to realize what was up with Penny Johnson and Dirty Dancing. As a kid I just thought she had a stomachache or something. Only recently did I realize she was pregnant and had a botched abortion. Daniel Hillard from Mrs. Doubtfire. Kid me thought it was unfair that his wife would leave him and take the kids when he was such a hilarious, fun guy. Adult me thinks yeah, there are multiple good reasons why she divorced you, Daniel. Mr. Wilson from Dennis the Menace. That kid really is a destructive force of nature, and his parents don't do crap to stop it. 2 years ago we moved into a house next door to a real life Dennis the Menace. The kid was loud, destructive, intrusive, and generally freaking horrible with no sense of boundaries. Worst part was that his parents thought it was cute. I was beyond happy when the family moved last year. Frick Dennis Mitchell. Mr. Wilson was the hero of that story. Team Rocket. As a kid they were just the goofballs appearing constantly for slapstick humor and episode drama. Rewatching the series as an adult they are actually a lot more endearing pair than any of the main cast and get a fair amount of development and depth throughout the series. And that's not including the puns and jokes that slipped by me in my childhood. Frollo and Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame. Child, he really doesn't like Esmeralda. Adult, how the frick is this guy in a Disney movie? Best villain song though. Robert Muldoon, the gamekeeper from Jurassic Park. As a kid he looked kind of scary, so I thought he was a bad guy. Rewatching the movie as an adult made me realize he was one of more responsible people at the park and brave as heck. Every parent in every Disney movie, they're just trying to get through life and they have to deal with 15-year-old magical princesses and crap. The Little Mermaid. Daddy, I'm 16 years old. I'm not a child anymore. Me at 7. That's right. You are a grown butt person and you can go chasing this guy you've literally never spoken to. Me at 22. Jesus Christ. You are so still a child. You've literally spoken to him. Calm down. Mulan. Growing up Asian I felt a connection to the character but in a way that children would. That is, she was rebellious. She was cool since she could wield a sword, and she was praised at the end. As a full-grown man now I see her as someone who just wanted to help out her parents regardless of what people said. Sure, she was a woman and people practically looked on her, even going so far as to shame her and her family just because she wanted to prevent her father from having to go out to fight in his old and injured state. That sometimes you have to do what you have to do and show all the morons who say you're not worth it that you are and that they have no control over you. She's the best of all the Disney princesses. Nani from Lilo and Stitch. As a kid she was the overly strict mother and always overly angry, while Lilo was the poor lost kid who was blamed for everything. As an adult, the film is heartbreaking. Nani is herself a young kid doing her best to keep her family together under the worst circumstances, and she's become one of my favorite characters of all time just for how relatable she is. King Triton. As a kid, you look at him as the powerful and oppressive father who is preventing Ariel from getting what she wants. As an adult, you realize more and more how stupid Ariel is and how much he is trying to actually protect her. Boromir. As a kid, I judged him as weak for not being able to resist the ring and as foolish for not liking the plan of the council. As an adult, I realize that his weakness is the weakness of almost all mortals. Very few people could resist the ring. Also, Gondor was in the most immediate danger and had been bearing the brunt of Sauron's power for the longest time. As the next steward of Gondor, his people's safety was his first concern. In the end, he shows his quality by sacrificing himself for the hobbits. He really exemplifies the best and worst parts of men. Plus, being older allows you to appreciate his death scene. When I first saw the movie, I wasn't old enough to appreciate the badassery of a man who takes first 1, then 2, then 3 huge arrows to the chest, and each time just gets up and keeps killing until he has no more fight left in him. Tommy Pickles. As a child my mom had a very temporary ban on Rugrats because we might get ideas, so naturally I loved that show. As an adult, holy crap, Tommy attempted to murder his even more infantile brother. Also Tommy's mom and every other parent blindly followed Dr. Lipschitz feel like the gospel. The man took a bath in your home while he was supposed to be watching 5+ babies at once. Squidward. I too have worked in the service industry. I was also grumpy and miserable doing it. You either quit a SpongeBob or work long enough to see yourself become a Squidward. You either quit a SpongeBob or work long enough to see yourself become a Squidward. I will always remember your wisdom. Sokka from Avatar: The Last Airbender. At first when I was growing up, I used to think of him as the useless but funny guy. I was too young to see anything else he did other than be the goofball. As I grew up and rewatched the series, I realized that he's by far the most relatable, reliable, and reasonable of the group. His non-bending is made up for with his leadership, resourcefulness, and his whole other plethora of skills. He reads the maps. He formulates both time and battle strategies. He is the emotional support for many characters. When I think about it, Sokka was a pretty good character to look up to when growing up. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I always thought as a kid that Greg got unfairly screwed by everyone around him. I recently returned to one of the books, skimming it before I gave away a bunch of my old childhood books, and realized that for every instance something bad happened to him out of his control, there were at least 5 more instances where he did something crappy and got his comeuppance. Manny is way worse. In one book, he tried to murder his entire family because they didn't teach how to try his freaking shoes. Cyclops from the X-Men. As a child, boring Titus who doesn't respect Wolverine's awesomeness and doesn't deserve Jean. As an adult, brainwashed child soldier who was given too much responsibility too young and consequently holds himself accountable for everything. Constantly freaks up, but keeps on trying to do the right thing. He's still a terrible husband, of course, but that's part of his constantly freaking up. I'll never understand people who only see Cyclops as a Boy Scout. He's honestly got a lot more depth than like 99% of the X-Men. Ned Flanders. When I was young I thought he was naive and a pushover. As an adult, I see that he had so much compassion in his heart that he selflessly gave to Homer and tolerated his abuse in full knowledge of how others viewed him. Also, the way he weathered adversity and defeat gives me pause to this day. I will probably never attain that level of inner certainty, but I can admire it with great respect and adulation. If everyone was like Ned, there'd be no need for a heaven. We'd already be there. Homer. Scott Pilgrim. Movie version. I viewed him as a nerdy everyman, but he's just so insufferable and unappealing. Ramona isn't much better. Yet, by the end of the final volume of the comic their friends point out how much of a pair of buttholes both of them are. They're perfect for each other. Lois. The mom from Malcolm in the Middle. When I was a kid I thought she was an awful fun killer. Now that I'm an adult, I see those kids were destructive monsters and she was a son comparatively. Not a mom but an adult with bills, and now I can see that she wasn't just a penny pinching cheapskate to be selfish. They were just trying to survive in mountains of bills and crappy jobs. I thought Cinderella was the worst Disney princess as a kid. I thought she was boring and a wimp for not running away from her awful family. And I thought the story was terrible for promoting her reliance on a dude to save her. As an adult, I recognize Cinderella's bravery for simply enduring abuse and staying kind and optimistic through it. Poor girl just wanted to go to a dang party. Principal Skinner. Dude's got serious PTSD from Nam. A middle-aged virgin. Is incapable of living on his own and thus lives with his mother, and then he has to work at Springfield Elementary on top of that. Man would be a ticking time bomb. I saw the Phantom of the Opera live when I was around 6 years old. I had a crush on the Phantom and couldn't figure out why people didn't admire his genius mind and gorgeous voice. Now as an adult, yes, Rahul is boring as all heck, but he wouldn't have controlled Christine and subjected her to a life of isolation. He's a sympathetic character, not a likable one. The guy had to raise himself, so of course he's going to have a lot of antisocial behaviors. He's someone to be pitied more than anything else. Thomas the Tank Engine. After rewatching for a bit, I found out that most of the show's problems stemmed from Thomas being a giant, entitled butthole. The lawyer from Jurassic Park. I get that the depiction of the character kind of was in line with how we generalize and demonize lawyers in film and media, but now that I'm an adult, it's completely reasonable to have the lawyer present during the initial tour of the park. I don't get why as a child I despised him so much and was totally fine when he was eaten by the T-Rex. Because he just left the kids in the car. Homer Simpson. As a kid I thought he was stupid and mean, especially the early seasons before they made him an utter buffoon. Then as I became an adult he was much more relatable. Or, I have 3 kids and no money. Why can't I have no kids and 3 money? As you get older you can see through his hijinks he really loves his kids and he tries his best to care for them. Miranda, the mom, from Mrs. Doubtfire. As a kid, I hated her. Thought she was a jerk who couldn't appreciate her husband's sense of fun, passion, zest for life. In hindsight, I now sympathize with her entirely. If my partner were constantly getting fired, throwing parties with the kids that I had to miss, and forcing me to be the disciplinarian bad guy while I sacrificed my time and effort to work a powerful job and support our family, dang, I would leave him too. It seemed like there were probably years worth of communication issues in that relationship as well, but I identify far more with Miranda now than I do with Robin Williams' character. Also, I think the kids in that movie world would have grown up to appreciate their mother more too. Squidward. I thought he was just some boring fun lacking soul, but the dude really just wants to get through work without having to stress out about SpongeBob. I always disliked him for being bitter as heck, but then I realized that I have very similar desires as him. Holden Caulfield. When I was 16 I identified with him. When I reread it at 22 I hated him and thought he was a total butthole. When I read it again at 28 I just saw a scared kid putting up a front. I read Catcher in the Rye when I was older and it jumped out at me that this is someone going through some kind of mental breakdown. I didn't see this when I read it when I was young. Han Solo. As a kid he's an ace shot. His swagger makes him cool. His best friend is a Wookiee. He has the best ride in the galaxy. And in the end he gets the girl. As an adult, holy crap, is this guy ever putting up a front? He never has any idea what he's doing from moment to moment. His only friends are constantly exasperated by him. Chewbacca arguing with Han in untranslated Wookiee. Princess Leia calling him on his bulls. He's massively in debt to a dangerous gangster, and his ride is always falling apart. Still the best character though. This got shown a little more in TFA I think. He and Leia are divorced and he's just flying around the galaxy getting in trouble with gangs and not being sure how he's going to clear it up. I think that's part of why he confronted Ben. I don't think he really cared if he lived or died. Why not take a chance to save his kid? Professor McGonagall. Reading the books as a kid, she seemed strict, cold, and unreachable. Now rereading as an adult, you see how much she actually cares, bending, and sometimes even breaking the rules for her students and putting herself in harm's way for them. She wasn't nearly as funny or motherly the first time I read the books, and I like her a whole lot more now. Her character is great. I felt the movies showed her more caring side very well, and how much she wanted to protect her students. She's quite the contrast from Umbridge's teaching style. Both are quite strict in their teaching mannerisms, but while Minerva does it out of the love for her students and never wishes them harm, the other is completely malicious. Elrond in LOTR. Maybe I was just young and didn't know how to interpret it, but I used to think he was kind of the mean dad trope, sending Arwen away with the rest of the elves when she was in love with Aragorn. Then I read the backstory, the Silmarillion, and understood both why the elves were leaving and how big of a bad butt he was in previous ages. He is one of my favorite characters in LOTR now. More power to you for actually getting through the Silmarillion. Woody from Toy Story. He was always a fun toy, but now I see his desperation to be played with and his jealousy when Andy plays with someone else. He is actually quite a dark character if you think about it. And also the fishing rod with Barbie legs. It looked fun when I was young, but now I know it was a H equals. Scott Pilgrim. I originally saw him as a really cool underdog trying to get the girl. Now I see him as a little crap who backstabbed knives. Pun totally intended. Sirius Black. He was super cool when I was a kid, but looking back as an adult he was pretty irresponsible and oftentimes childish. He did go to prison when he was like 21 though, and stayed there for 12 years. He missed a lot of the development you have in your 20s. So while I think he acts like a teenager, I see why. Also, it's pretty much the worst prison imaginable, ran by what are essentially icy demons that suck out your positive thoughts. No way you can get out of there without being messed up in the head. Dr. Cox from Scrubs. I watched Scrubs and HS before I worked in healthcare. I never realized Dr. Cox was the good guy, battling the stresses and challenges of medicine while trying to advocate the best he can for his patients. I didn't know why Laura wouldn't date Urkel as a boy. Now that I'm an adult, I realize everything he did was repugnant. He wasn't her type. Rather than accepting it, he tried to do more shenanigans. In the final seasons, they were dating, and it was dumb. Molly Weasley. I used to see her as overprotective and pretty bland, but now I see she's fierce and integral to the plot as Harry's main mother figure and also looks after her children really well. Not my daughter UB. I was her for Halloween once. As an adult, Mr. Ratban is pretty okay. He likes teaching, likes kids, holds them accountable, and does his best to help them when they need it. He also does his best to not embarrass them. As a kid I thought he was terrifying. Now that I'm a parent, I read The Giving Tree in a totally different way. As a kid I thought the boy in the story was a thoughtless jerk, stand-in for humans, and the tree was like the earth or something. Now, I finally get that the tree is a parent, and the kid is literally that, and that's life. If there's other interpretations, I don't know them, but this new one goes deep for me. Kids still shouldn't take everything from the parent. There's literally nothing left of the tree. The kid takes and takes even when he's literally killing the tree. It's a great metaphor for loving sacrifice, but it's also a warning. The tree keeps sacrificing itself until nothing is left at all. Parents shouldn't give all of themselves to their children because it's destructive to both of them. Boromir. Used to think he was weak-willed. Now I can see his humanity made it harder for him than any of the other party members. He's a hero for being able to break the ring's hold on him when it mattered most. Aragorn is Dunedain. Don't forget, AJ McClain of Backstreet fame. Dude went public with his addiction recovery in a world where his fans were around 15 years old. He was the role model I needed. I used to think he was just a nice singer. I used to think Ella should have punched her stepsisters and stepmother. She was so young when the abuse started. I can see now that she had no chance. Aladdin is a jerk. I'd still tap that, but he's a jerk. The Gilmore Girls. When I was younger Lolly was the coolest mom and Rory was goals. Now as a young adult I realize Lolly was so stubborn and irresponsible and Rory was spoiled and literally thought everything should be handed to her. Emily is the only sane one. And don't even get me started on the Netflix special. John Hammond in Jurassic Park. I thought he was just a lovable old guy who turned a dream into a reality. Now I view him as a reckless egomaniac overly concerned with superficiality to the point people lost their lives. When I was a teen, I saw the Joker as a sympathetic character, and I shipped the Joker and Harley Quinn hard. But then, I had to help get a friend out of a relationship with an abusive man. Suddenly I didn't find their relationship so cute anymore. Yet, I've never understood the belief that Joker Harley was some admirable relationship. Joker is a psychotic sociopath. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. And Harley is a means to an end for him. Only now are they actually getting her out of his shadow and making her a strong character. Tigger. I thought he was the coolest when I was a kid. When I watched the movies again with my little sister when I was shocked at how much of a destructive butthole he was. Rabbit should have kicked his butt. Severus Snape. As a child, I felt bad for him and everything revealed at the end of Deathly Hallows sort of redeemed him. As an adult, rereading the books still give me an icky feeling about him. Like, a girl didn't love him back and he was bullied in school, so he made life heck for his students, so much that some students' greatest fear was him? Nah. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.